Kind of funny how I reached out to you because I saw somebody who was on my podcast that had these t-shirts that said okay to feel like shit, and I'm all about that. And I'm like, I saw it on her and she posted it and I'm like, "Oh my God, where did she get that t-shirt?" And then as I was doing more research, and it's just amazing how you can find out so much information on the internet, I got to you and I'm like,
Oh,
whoa, wait a minute. And she's on this amazing mission for mental health awareness. And I'm like, okay, I have to have her on my podcast. I need to know all about her. I want to know what she's doing. So that's kind of funny how it, got me to you from a t-shirt, which I need to order because I need to wear that because if it today I was just telling you that today is my daughter's first day of school. And yeah, I kind of do feel like shit a little bit because it's.
yeah. I'll tell you, I've been wearing mine a lot the last week because all three of my kids have gone back to school with different attitudes and feelings towards that. And I think I had it on pretty much every day last week. 'Cause it's kind of like this comfort thing. And a lot of people were contacting me saying the same things, going, we've got our t-shirt on today. It's been a really tough day. And it just kind of makes you feel that you're not alone. Like we're kind of
uh,
all feeling this at different times.
I love that, Susie. See, I love this. And we're going to talk a lot more about the t shirts further down with the interview. But let's first begin with, first of all, give us a little bit of your background history. Where are you talking to us from?
Well, I am in London, and I'm from Scotland, but I moved down to London probably about 20 years ago, and it's city it just sucks you in, and I never returned to Scotland and met my husband, and now have three children, and we live in West London, and I worked in PR at first after university. Then I went into the city and worked on the trading floor in one of the big banks, and then I ended up in teaching, which is something I'd always kind of really wanted to do because I just loved being with kids and the whole idea of teaching them. And through that, I started becoming aware of mental health issues amongst young people.
Mm.
And I started my own family, went back to teaching, had another baby, and etc. And it was then through the children I was working with and just becoming more aware of, and unfortunately, the increasing number of children being affected by their mental health, and having my own children and sort of seeing the effects of things on them. And myself, when I'm in my early 20s, I first got hit by depression and severe panic attacks, kind of out of nowhere. It felt like it was out of nowhere when I was at university. And I just felt so alone because back then, the stigma was huge. And anyone who had anything to do with anything mental was like weirdo. And I just felt the loneliest person in the world. I remember trying to talk to a friend and, oh, you're freaking me out. I don't want to talk about this. And just didn't want anyone else as a young person to ever feel like that. I know lots of them do. So I felt I had to do something. And so I started my S.H.I.T campaign. It's actually called. So I've made these t-shirts. So play on my blog names. My blog name's obviously So Happy in Town, S.H.I.T. And so I just incorporated that into this logo and
Oh,
thought, it's okay to feel shit. And that's how you discover me, which is amazing.
yeah. Oh my God. And I didn't even realize it. So happy in
Yeah.
wow. I didn't even think. Wow.
Because I called it that because I wanted to talk about, because if you see this So Happy in Town, you can think, oh, you're so happy in town, but it's actually about the the shit as well. So the really honest, everything in life is not hunky-dory and, rainbows and unicorns as much as we'd like it to be. There's good shit and there's bad shit. And I wanted to talk about that honestly so that other parents and middle-aged people could sort of think, yeah, I feel like that sometimes too. So that's how the shit came about, and they're so happy in town, etc. And yeah.
So, it's you mentioned with working with children, and I think that is, I myself have worked with children as well, and I really feel like they're the ones who really need someone to advocate for them, and they don't have a voice to help them because they do feel alone. And if you think about where you were at the time where you were having your own, bouts of depression, and you said you felt alone, what would you say if you think about where we are now with all that? Because you mentioned the stigma. do you feel that we have made some strides in making it less of a stigma, or do you think we're still at the same, same way we
Mm.
were back then?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think we've definitely made progress. I mean, the fact that we're talking like this, my children know the words mental health, they hear them a lot, they do talk to them at school. I mean, I hadn't even literally hadn't heard the words mental health. I don't know about you when you were growing up in the States, but it was something that was absolutely not talked about at all. And it had this, yeah, real taboo about it. So I think now we are seeing children talking more. I certainly think a lot of people still feel they can't talk about it. They feel this shame, which is so wrong, because the more we talk about it, the more I hear other people saying, oh God, I felt like that too, and I didn't feel like anyone else did, because I felt everyone else is fine. And I think that's the problem, isn't it? I remember feeling everyone else was absolutely hunky-dory, like really, just leaping through life. And what was wrong with me? Why was I struggling? Why, was I this weird, or was I this failure? And I hope, well, I think people are still feeling that, but I hope we're kind of smashing through that stigma. The more of us who talk about it, and certainly I'm sure you're the same with your daughter. I mean, I talk a lot to my kids about it, and to the point where they're like, here she goes again.
We're fine, Mom. Okay, we're fine.
We're actually okay. We've not talked about mental health today. But it's this, I want them to know that anything they feel is okay, and it's absolutely nothing to be ashamed about. Whatever, even if the good days are fine, but the really shit days are fine, and they're not alone. And I do say to them, I know it's really hard at their age to see this, but in that class of whatever, 25, there'll be 18 other kids possibly feeling the same at some point. And they say to me, no, they don't, because I think at that age it's incredibly hard to feel that anyone else does. But I think we just keep talking about it, then we're making progress.
Right. And you mentioned that you talk to your kids, and I think I saw an article that they did an interview with you, and they asked you about, how do you go about talking to your kids? And it's kind of like, how do you do that? I mean, I think that with you, because you had this experience and you know how it felt to be alone, I can't imagine a parent who hasn't had that experience. So what would you tell a parent, and just as a parent to a parent or mother to a mother, what would you tell them? How do you go about doing that when they themselves never experienced it? Because, like you said, this is a whole new world for them with this whole pandemic. I mean, we certainly didn't go through this during our time. But how would a mom or dad talk to their kids about mental health when they themselves have never gone through it?
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point, because it's easy for me to talk to them, because I can always say, I felt like this, or when I felt like this, and I wasn't able to talk to anyone. And when, if you haven't ever experienced that, I know from talking to other people who haven't, it is very difficult to try and understand how it feels. And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy.
Right.
But it's very hard, isn't it, to almost feel that empathy if you really are lucky enough never to have been there. So I think my advice would be is just to keep them talking, just to let them know. It sounds so basic, and I say it again and again, but that it's okay to talk about anything to your parents, so they're approachable, that they're never going to say, because when I was growing up, I got a lot of, oh, don't be silly, you're there's so many other people worse off than you, so you are so lucky in everything you have, in living in this house, and you've got friends, and I remember just that shutting me up, thinking I have no right to talk about my feelings, because I obviously live in this fairly privileged world compared to many people out there. And that was often said to me, not my parents' fault. I think that's obviously how they were brought up. So I think that's the worst thing you can say to a child. And I think it's the validating their feelings, not saying, no, you don't feel like that. You should just saying, yeah, I understand that you're scared about going to school today, or I understand you feel sad by what your friend said to you. I think that's really, really important. Just saying that it's okay how they're feeling, and then not offering all these solutions, but just listening, so they just know that they're being heard. Because, you know, I have no kind of qualifications or, you know, therapy degrees, so I can't, not that the therapists will fix things for you, but it's just knowing that they can talk and I will listen, and I'm there and always there. And that would be my advice.
Yeah, I think that